Okay, so as we start to develop the plans with the building committee, we're actually starting to look at actual spaces within the building and how the building's going to function. But we're also looking at the character of the interior of the building. So what you're looking at here is the development of the first floor plan. What you see in red are administrative spaces, and you can see that they're on the three corners of the school. And then there is an office just off of the kitchen that's also basically administrative office. So as we spoke about last time, it gives us eyes on all four sides. Let's see. Maybe I should get out of this so I can just turn the page. And then as you walk into the front door, some of the character that we've been sort of thinking about is to really create a sense of place at that front lobby, if you will. Then there's also been a discussion, if you look at the sketch here, sort of towards the back, about actually having a glass wall with some doors that separate the main common area from the lobby space, and that would take care of acoustics and things while the students are eating. It would also allow for some acoustics and another layer of security when the public's coming into the building and folks are there. However, you know, as welcoming as we want to be in a school, you know, you can decide to keep those doors open or not even have the glass wall. You know, it's one of the things that the committee's been talking about. But this would be the lobby. With the idea that as you come in, maybe there's a screen on the left-hand side that explains to the community all the sustainability factors and features of the building, a place to rest, and then the band storage, instrument storage that we talked about would be in this area right here. And then on the other side, we have some utility spaces like public restrooms and such. As you go further into the building, this is the common area where the students would dine. The library would extend out to for all other times of the day when the two dining periods are not taking place. On the right-hand side, you'd be able to see into the recital hall. And on the left-hand side, you'd be able to peek into the gymnasium, but we'd also have lots of display for student work that could go on in that space. Upstairs, we have two health classrooms that overlook that space. There's a walkway to the balcony of the recital hall. And then at the far end, we would have the library proper itself at the end of the Learning Commons, and then STEM and art up on the second floor, so you'd be able to see those areas as well. So that common area really talks all about the students and the health and wellness of the students with the phys ed area, the specials, in other words, art and STEM and music and health, and it's all right there in the core of the building as one large extension of the library. Yep.
So a few questions, maybe. That possible glass wall partition, are we now on the other side of it?
Yes.
Okay, so we're there. How high up is the space here? Is it 2 stories or does it go up to the...
It's 2 stories.
2 stories. And what about noise? Kind of just thinking you've got some hard surfaces kind of framing that space.
Yep.
How do you dampen that noise? How do you make that not a...
So, yep, great questions. So acoustically, all of the surface areas for the ceilings and even the surface areas of these walls, which are high above, can be acoustic treatments on the space itself. We can talk about what type of flooring we have. And then up above, you know, we can hang some light fixtures down, and we can also hang some other acoustic products, if you will, to absorb the sound. So it's something that our acoustic engineer would work closely with the team to make sure that we are keeping the noise levels down during the lunch periods. You know, libraries today, especially public libraries, are loud libraries, right? So the idea is that you want to contain that loud library so it doesn't disturb maybe some music going on. So there'd be acoustic wall separations, so that glass wall that you see there would be an acoustic frame, so that the music taking place wouldn't disturb lunch, and lunch wouldn't disturb the music. Same thing with the phys ed, and same thing with these upper classrooms. Mm-hmm.
Just to continue with the glass to the recital hall, how would that be as far as acoustically within the recital hall, because I'm just thinking that I'm not, glass is, I guess, an unfamiliar.
Yep. It's a hard surface, and music bounces off of it, or I should say.
Should be fine, okay.
Right. However, we are thinking of also having a curtain in front of that glass, which is also an acoustic curtain. So in certain performances, when you want that sound to bounce off the back wall behind the orchestra, you will have it. But in other instances where you want that sound to be absorbed, we can close the curtain.
Okay.
And then we can also close the curtain if you're having some other type of presentation in that space, because even though that space is designed to be a performance space, you could also envision guest speakers coming in there, all sorts of other types of events where you may want to close the curtains because it's going on at some point in the day or some point in the weekend where other activities are taking place in the school. So to that point, if we go up to the second floor, we continue with the specials on the second floor, which is world language. We have some more music in terms of the chorus room, and then our art and our STEM areas. But the balcony is also accessible. You may also notice, and I want to just point out that we've been talking about having 2 elevators in the building. The 2 elevators in the building do 2 things. Number one, it gives us an elevator on what we'll call the public side of the second floor, so we can lock down the rest of this when the recital hall balcony is being used. But it also cuts the distance in half for any student who's on crutches or in a wheelchair, or any faculty member who may need assistance at any point during the year. It really cuts down that distance of how far they need to travel to get to an elevator. And that balcony and the glass wall that you were just mentioning, the recital hall may take on a language that's similar to the rest of the school, but in many ways reflect music. So if you can imagine that glass wall there, which looks into the common space, we would have some curtains that would be able to close for both acoustics and for vision. The balcony itself would look down onto that performance space. We talked last time of not having a stage. So by not having a stage, you really focus everybody's attention down to that central space where the performance takes place. And this, what you see here are some clouds and some lighting and such. And again, it wouldn't be designed for drama, but it would be designed specifically for music events. Yep.
Can I ask you just a question about this design? Because when you look at it, actually, I mean, when you build a performance space, the biggest thing is to have good sound coming back. And so the generalized, really most common design is to have it curved and then tiered down so the sound is coming out. So if you look at that design, actually have, so they're almost in the round, the people on the sides actually are behind or looking the side. So the sound, I'm questioning kind of what their sound would be like. And then the second thing is the problem with the glass wall is, like, if you decide to use it as more of a multi-purpose, and that is like if you're going to have video back behind it, there's no way to do it. It's like, I mean, most of the theaters that I just toured in, they actually had in fact for the light, they had LED screening back behind, so it allows it to be more multi-purpose. I think this design kind of limits your options in some way. So I've just, has this design been done somewhere? Did you see it somewhere? Did we get feedback from it? I mean, I kind of.
Sure, good question. So there are many little recital halls, if you will, of this size that have been done. I won't say the same as this, because I don't think we haven't intentionally copied any recital space. We do have a recital hall consultant working with us, and as he starts to look at this, I think the sound shells that you're talking about are things that we can either bring into the realm when they're needed and also bring them out, as opposed to fixing them in place. But we can certainly do that. I think the comment about display is really good, because we've talked about that a lot at the committee level, where we're thinking, and you don't see them here in the rendering, but maybe even having 3 screens So one focused in this direction, one in this direction, and one towards the main house, where they're digital displays.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what I saw at Shundu, the first
Yep.
one. They had a main, where the big glass window would be like kind of a main display, and there was one to the side. Again, but the concern I still see is like, again, if you look at where you have your band there, you're literally behind the band at the up, you know, those upper tiers. And I don't know if you've ever been to Fenway and sat at right field, but during that performance, you're going to be going like this the whole way. So it's like, those side seatings are more like an arena seating than a performance thing. Is there any way, I mean, you can pull them back, you know what I mean, so that you're still in front of seeing, either you have to push the band back to the window or tier the seating, you know what I'm saying? Because those sides are really not particularly great setups for a performance.
Right. And I think you're correct. I think what we would want to do, if this were filled and we had the full orchestra, they'd be up against the back, they'd be up against the glass, if you will. I've been to Fenway, but not during a concert. Although I would have
painful.
loved to
Don't
go
sit
see
right
Jimmy
field.
Buffett, but that's another story. We do have tiered seating. So you're at the floor level, and the seating immediately starts to rise. I think if we go back to the plan a little bit, you may see the proportions, is that the space is really out here in front of the glass, and then the seats are back a ways. Having said that, what we can do is do some more renderings, give some more thought to everything that you're talking about, work with the acoustic engineers and the recital hall engineers, just to make sure we have sight lines. We can also bring some photos in. I know that the Gardner Museum in Boston has a very intimate recital hall in the middle of it, and that is one that obviously this doesn't copy, but it's very similar in that you sit at the side and see the orchestra, or you sit in front and see the orchestra. Those balconies are very steep. So to that point, I think it's interesting to maybe we could present different types of recital halls and how they work, and a lot of them duplicate both drama and music. And the ones that just focus on music, we also visited the Boston Conservatory, the new building in Boston, just next to Berklee School of Music. And they had a very similar space where you sort of go around the orchestra when they play. So definitely good comments, and it's definitely something we're going to continue to develop as we move forward.
Just as a follow-up, and I think those points were real valid. Right now, music is certainly kind of primary in our middle school, and certainly we build something to reflect what's primary, but I think we also want to be building perhaps anticipatory and also being able to accommodate. And I hope that we're not shortchanging drama to satisfy the needs of our current music, because just as music is something we emphasize. We, as you're aware, we changed our kind of program. We brought in a strings program, but certainly there are advocates for drama in our community, and perhaps that pendulum might swing. And if we have a space that's really designed for recital and not so functional for drama, I think we're going to be kicking ourselves 10, 12 years down, or who knows. So I think, to Al's point, that we want to make it really good to listen to a performance, I think we should really design in an anticipatory way to meet other needs and not lock into the current, but look to the future. Does that make sense?
So if I may, Kenny, so the current Performing Arts Center in the high school is designed purposely for drama and not music. So the idea here is to have drama happen at the high school, where we have all the staging and all the devices that we need and all of that. A music recital hall doesn't require all of that equipment, and so one of the rationales behind making this a music recital hall is that the number of kids who are participating in music literally are in the hundreds between the two buildings. And so right now, when we do a music performance at the high school, like we did most recently with Mastway, we had standing room only. On the 8th, when we do the strings program, we'll be in the gymnasium at the high school because the auditorium at the high school no longer services that need. I don't anticipate that music is going to go through cycles. I mean, we have an amazing program, and so now we have a space that's dedicated to drama, then we'll have a space that's dedicated to music, which doesn't mean this space can't be used for other things. It just means that we're not going to invest in the staging and all of the equipment that is involved in being able to have an optional drama space. So that's really the kind of mindset we've been working on. 2 dedicated spaces, one for drama and performance and one for music. But this space could just as easily be used for presentations. It could be used for Shakespearean theater in the round where they don't use staging. It could be used for modern theater where they don't use staging. So I don't think that, even though this is principally being designed for music, the one thing it wouldn't be able to do is put on a full-fledged play, because it's not designed that way, but we have the high school. But it would be able to do many other things besides music.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
I guess I agree with the concern, though. Almost every performance I've been to in the auditorium here at the high school is at or near capacity. And so regardless of what this is designed for, the groups are going to want to use this space if they anticipate having more than 500 people in the audience. So we need to really consider how this is going to be used when we try to shoehorn a play into there, because that's going to happen the first year. I don't think that's a down the road thing. I don't think that's anticipating future needs. I think that's as soon as the building's open.
Sure. So I've gone to many of the plays. I'll never say all of them. Denise and I tend to meet each other at all of the performances. And the places where we exhaust the space are music.
It's
They're
music.
never drama.
Yeah.
When we do one-act plays, we don't fill that auditorium. When we do musicals, we mostly fill it, but it's over a 3 or 4 day period, so that never gets exhausted in that instance either. So I think that the flexibility will be there. It just won't be, you don't want to duplicate here what you have at the high school. Because it's expensive. I mean, if we want to have a full-fledged stage here with flying, whatever they call them,
Yep.
buttresses or whatever they call them, the light structures and all of that, you'll add $2-3 million to the space. So the idea is 2 dedicated spaces, and we know when we exhaust the space at the high school, it is music, it's not drama. Could it be? Of course it could be, but we've had some really popular plays at the high school, and we never have standing room only. We usually, everybody has a seat. I mean, that's been my experience,
Yeah.
and Denise goes as much as I do, so.
And I mean, I totally agree, and I'm not suggesting music will fall out of favor, but I think I raised it kind of based on what Al said too, is if we want to look at the full potential of that space, we should really be looking at both the acoustic and sight lines for people who might be in the corner, and we should try to maximize that, not duplicate the high school.
No,
get
I
what you're
totally
saying.
agree with those comments.
Yeah,
Totally.
that's what.
I just wanted to give you the sense of why we're purposing the 2 spaces differently.
So when we get to it, what you're looking at right now are hand sketches, just to sort of give the flavor of the experience of the space. When we start getting into 3D modeling of the space itself, like some of the things that we've shown a little earlier, you'll be able to see that. We'll be able to put the camera sort of in the right-hand piece of the balcony and see exactly what they're looking at. I'm not saying this won't get adjusted, because as we develop the space, it will, and as our consultant gets more involved in this, he may bring up exactly
Yeah.
what's been brought up here tonight. But we definitely want to create a space that, as Dr. Morse said, we can do presentations, we can do all sorts of things, but I think the primary thing is to make sure acoustically it works perfect for the music program.
Right.
And then everything else is just icing on the cake, I would suggest. Any other thoughts about the recital hall? One thing that Jim Rozicki had brought up, which was a great idea, was that the performance floor, the actual floor that defines the performance space, should be the same type of athletic floor as the PE gym, so that you could also have dance in here, so that you could also have those kinds of events. And that was interesting and a good idea and a good thought for us to look into.
I mean, the only thing about that is you'll have to have more treatment, because a hard floor is reflective. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's a lot of surface to bounce the sound out. You don't want it echoing, but again, I think you already have an engineer, and tuning the room will be the big
Yeah.
thing.
How much do we think that when the glass will be open or not curtained during the day? If we're using this space, is there going to be too much distraction in the Learning Commons for?
Well, actually, the idea behind the windows is so that the music department could actually turn themselves right around and do performances for the kids. We'll have a sound system that goes through the glass, so the idea behind the glass isn't just to make it pretty, it's also so we can do things for the students during the school day without having, they could be eating and we could be doing performances for them, that kind of thing.
So as we go up to the third floor and the fourth floor, just as we spoke last time, there's 4 distinct team areas, and they all have their classroom space, and then there's a central student commons, and the student commons consists of special ed breakout space off of it, the faculty workrooms rather. We're also designing a breakfast nook, so that as students come into the school every day, they're able to socialize once they get there with other students. That's usually part of the reason why they skip the breakfast piece of it. But if we can then bring sort of grab-and-go items from breakfast up into the student common area, students may be more likely to just grab something as they start their day. And then the fourth floor, obviously, is exactly the same. And what we've talked about in sort of that student common area, if you will, was another glass separation so that the team areas are acoustically separated from the student commons, yet they're very secure because we have lots of eyes on the student commons from all 4 teams. And we would distribute student storage or locker space, if you will, around the student commons. And you'd be able to come out from your team into the common area to do whatever you got to do without actually leaving the team, because you'd be visually connected with everybody. This is a view of the 4th floor. The 3rd floor would be exactly the same, except it wouldn't have the clear story windows. And we understand we're showing a lot of glass in these renderings right now, and that's going to get toned down. But what we want to show is where's the priority for the glass. Because what the glass does is it allows the visual connection between all these spaces and let in a lot of natural light. So you can imagine the 3rd floor being similar, and then here on the 4th floor, we did consider at the committee level of having all of the student storage locker space, if you will, and think of these as phenolic lockers, so when you slam them, they don't make noise. They just close. That all of those in the middle would be low lockers, so you'd be able to see over them. And those low lockers provide counter space for yet again another breakout area. And the committee also talked about charging stations, so the students would be able to come up there in the morning and then in the afternoon, sort of after their lunch or before their lunch period, and then at the end of the day, and they'd be able to charge things. It also provides yet another space for breakout so that faculty members can bring students into the common areas if they need any support, things like that, small groups of students. So really, you're sort of getting the big bang for $2 in this area, if you will. Number one, it's a common area for the students, but number 2, it's also educational space. That was one of the things that the committee has asked us to really consider, is that every inch of this building is used for educational space. Yep.
So the only question I have about those low lockers, if you did have a student who, for whatever reason, couldn't like bend down, you know, how would that work?
So much like the lockers you have here in the high school, they're about
Oh, okay, so
36
they're not,
inches
like,
tall.
real low,
And then the
okay.
locker itself is 30 inches.
Okay.
So the dial would be sort of at the top, or
Okay.
not too far down. I'm about
Okay.
the size of a middle school kid, right? So,
Okay.
you know, it would work out pretty well. We do have, it's a good point too about handicap. So we will have handicap accessible
Oh, okay.
lockers throughout this as well.
Okay,
I'd also add, Ron, that part of the feedback from the students was they didn't like being on the bottom of a two-locker system because
Right.
if there was a lot of traffic, a possibility of books falling on them from the
Right.
person trying to get their stuff out. So we thought this reflected student input by keeping it at a low level.
right.
So that's essentially, because you know, we've all been talking about the site and so forth, and we do have our civil engineer who's now working on the site to consider, number one, the amount of asphalt, which was a comment we heard at the last meeting, and number two, to take care of the grades, because we did talk about those grades that come down. And so we're really trying to dial into the site itself. So if that's enough for this evening, we are just now starting to work on the energy aspect of the building. So we had a great meeting with Jay and Jim to talk about how they use the building in terms of an energy scheduling point of view. And we're putting together a basis of design with some options for everybody to look at in terms of how is the building going to operate, everything from the heating system to the cooling system to domestic hot water, anything that uses some kind of energy. One goal is to do an all-electric building for the net zero ready target, if you will. And another one is to have some amount of fossil fuel. And we can talk about the pros and cons of that maybe the next time we're here. And we do have the beginnings of a presentation that we'd like to share with everybody in the next few weeks. The next step is to also meet with the faculty and the students again before they leave for vacation, just to give them sort of an update as to where we are and how things are looking, and obviously to receive a lot of feedback and a lot of comments so that we can work on that when they come back in September. They can take a look at that.
So we think about 2 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now for your next visit to us? Mm-hmm. So which one?
Oh, whichever you prefer. We'll be ready to.
We'd want you to have enough work done so that it would be new information for the board. So
Yep.
if 2 weeks, if you're going to have new information that's worth sharing with the board that quickly, yes. But if you don't, then we should stick to our cycle of the first meeting of the month.
Okay, so in 2 weeks, we could do sort of a sustainability outline of what it is we're doing, because that is going pretty quickly. We've had several meetings now. We're starting to hone in, if you will, on a sustainable attribute. That'll be a really boring meeting, because it's going to talk about lots of nuts and bolts and watts and amps. But you get the sense of what we're trying to do to reduce the energy use for the entire building, as well as capture as much daylighting and passive solar heating as we can. So that would be a great discussion.
And if that's going to be our discussion, we have people in the community who, it may be boring to many people, but there are people who are very, very much into that conversation around sustainability. So if we know that's going to be the topic, I can put on the agenda architect report /sustainability, and then make sure that that group of people in the 3 towns know that that's going to be the focus of the conversation, because they're very, very interested in that.
And that's what I would recommend, just so that, you know, there's more information before everybody leaves for the summer.
Good.
And then the following meeting, we may have more updates in terms of maybe some exterior designs we're doing, maybe some updates based on the comments we received here tonight.
Right.
You might have a section, geothermal energy for dummies,
I just took that course. No,
the next time, because I mean, I think that's a real exciting thing, but for a lot of us, it's pretty
yeah,
science fiction.
yeah. Yeah, well, that's a great point. You know, it's actually kind of a simple system once you've done it a few times. So I think we could bring some diagrams in just to show everybody exactly how this works. Like, for instance, it doesn't touch the groundwater. So I know lots of times when people hear geothermal, they think Iceland, you know, and where they do use the groundwater, but it's not that type of system. So we should do exactly that.
Okay,
Yep.
so 2 weeks.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Ron.
All right. Thank you.